going to do the brachas, guys.
Okay.
Well, I'm happy to see all of you. We're not exactly men's health fitness models of the year. None of us. Except maybe Kevin. He looks the healthiest out of the bunch.
Yeah, when he
Gavin,
runs.
the side of your camera.
Sorry.
Okay, let's start the bracha, guys. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'suk b'divrei Torah. Barev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toracha b'finu u'fi emcha beit Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu v'tze'etzenu v'tze'etzeimcha beit Yisrael. Kulani yodea shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai l'mei Torah l'amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu torato. Baruch atah nanu teina Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. So I sent, I don't know if any of you saw on the group the question that I had for Rabbi Cohen. Did any of you read it on the group? Or
Yeah, I did. I did. I didn't see an answer, but...
Okay, so clearly there is the answer, because the answer that...
19b. Yeah.
I'm just going to repeat the question for the benefit of the group. I said to Rabbi Cohen, if you have clarity on why unusual damage for an animal in a store of a shopkeeper will be the default position, when it could just as logically be food damages under the category of shame in the private store. Because the Gemara's default is that it's a case of keren tam or keren muad, depending on many times the animal did it. So that is the default position in the Gemara. But as I asked him logically, if it is considered the private domain and the animal is entering that private domain, surely it could be a case then of shame at which you are obligated in the private domain. And my reasoning is if it was a herbivore animal, that an animal would be attracted to the fruits and vegetables in a greengrocer store. Like we had a Portuguese guy when we were young in Yeovil, and he had he had Manny. Kevin's funny. They're all called Manny, Manuel. And he had his greengrocer store. And then you have a butchery like Moishe's, not where they've drained the blood out with salt. Think of it more like a butchery where, they're doing the shechting there and it smells full of blood. Any carnivorous creature would be wetting its lips to get hold of that meat. So Rabbi Cohen's answer, I'd be happy to tell you that I had a discussion with Gavin, and Gavin said like Rabbi Cohen, which is, it's still unusual for the animal to enter the store, because when Rabbi Cohen phoned me, he said, today we've got the SPCA and we've got animal rights. And, people think animal on YouTube and Instagram are very cute when they do funny, peculiar things. But in those days, an animal was a working animal. And basically, if it entered a store where it could cost the store owner money, the store owner would probably think nothing of giving the animal a clap of its life. To where the case of it is, if it was keren tam, it would certainly leave an impression from a welt on the animal's head to a welt in its memory that it wasn't a place to go shopping for free food. So I can guarantee you that they might have done certain mechanisms. What mechanisms could we think of that they might have done? The one thing is they might have created an entrance door, being pretty small, that bigger animals couldn't enter. In other words, it's something I was thinking about last night. This is not Rabbi Cohen. That if they make it keren tam, I would create a door that would be enough for single people to walk through, which is it's approximately a 930 mil doors, your standard door width that you can walk through. And even if you're a little bit on the obese side and you have a confectionery store, you can still get through that thing. Might not be for certain Americans because they are very obese, but most people can get through a door like that. But a cow wouldn't be able to get through a door like that. In terms of the smaller sort of domestic animals like your herbivores and the carnivores, As Rabbi Cohen said, one clap would probably leave an indelible impression on the animal. So, Gavin, the truth of it is what you said is the Gemara's opinion, that it's not shown. I can think it's shown for the logical reason that it's a public domain, but the reality is it's unusual damage because an animal wouldn't enter into there comfortably, especially the second time. So well done, Gavin. Well done.
Thanks.
Okay. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
And you doing right, eh?
Good, man. Listen, you must let me know one of these evenings when you want me to catch you up.
Catch up. Yes.
Because my goal here is that this is a pleasant experience for you. We love seeing you. So it might be the right year for you, or time-wise or subject matter-wise, it might not. I mean, you're welcome as daisies in spring. I mean, we always love to see you. But at the end of the day, Stephen, I want you to get the most out of the shiur. And when you pop in for a couple of minutes at a time, you're doing a wonderful idea for your parents. But at the essence of it is that I want you to come out of any shiur that you enter into with like some sort of an enjoyment and some leaving with some sort of Torah knowledge. And the thing that's worrying me is if it's been going on for months this year, and you've got a difficulty to catch up. I'd love to catch you up one evening just so that you get an idea of the broader concepts. But it's up to you. You let me know when you want to do it. Generally, Tuesday and Thursday nights would be good, just to keep the bottom line. And I will work within to help you to the best of my ability. And then when you are caught up, if you do come to the shiur, and then at least for a little bit, then at least you're probably going to be at a stronger footing. So you let me know when you want to pick me up on that offer.
Okay. Maybe tomorrow is it Tuesday and Thursday night?
Yeah, we can start from this coming either tomorrow night, or if you prefer Tuesday night, we can start on a Sunday night. You'll let me know what's good for you.
Okay, tomorrow.
Okay, so you're working something. After you are recording, hey mate?
Yeah, I'm recording.
All right, so Gavin, that was to answer the question. Now, what we're going to do very, very quickly is that now that you understand the principles of discussion, remember yesterday when I uploaded the shiur to the drive, it wouldn't accept it on YouTube for some reason, but I'm going to do it again, is that I'm going to fly through the Gemara, because what yesterday's discussion was about was to understand all these concepts that have been added to this particular daf so far based on the Mishnah, and we learned 6 different concepts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly through the daf, and then you'll pick up those concepts one at a time, okay? And then we'll get to the point where we're addressing some new issues today. So let's just fly through. 19b3. The rabbis taught in a brisa the tooth of an animal is muad to eat what is appropriate for it. How so? If an animal entered the yard of the damaged party and ate foods that are appropriate for her to eat and drank beverages that are appropriate for her, the animal owner pays full damages. And similarly, if a wild beast entered the yard of the damaged party and tore apart an animal and ate the meat, the beast's owner pays full damages. Okay? And similarly, if a cow ate barley or donkey ate fetch, or a dog lapped oiled, or hog ate a slice of meat, their owners pay full damages. Okay. Now, Rav Papa said that in a brisa, if an animal eats any food that is not her regular fare, but she will normally eat it out of necessity, then this is still called eating rather than destruction. So, for example, he says if a cat eats dates or a donkey eats fish, the animal's owner pays full damages. So Rabbi Cohen gave a very good analogy to me. He said, if you take a kugel in Santon and she feeds her Chihuahua steak, the very best steak, ribeye steak, that's nearly 300 rand a kilogram, which is like the price of cocaine, and chops it up and gives this animal steak. But she goes on holiday, and the maid forgets to come in that morning, and eventually the maid rocks up at the early the following morning because she had a problem getting public transport from Zimbabwe. then the dog in a starving, pinching situation will end up eating regular dog food. Now, in that case, it would be a case of full shame. Why? Because the animal is built physiologically to eat dog food. The fact that she's pampered her precious to eat a steak that I don't even buy for myself, that would be a luxury where the dog's palate has become used to that. But to eat food that's normally its regulated fare, which is physiologically appropriate for it, is still a case of what an animal would eat in a pinch. So these four particular cases are what an animal would eat if hungry, but not its ideal food substance in terms of what it likes. Why? A donkey generally doesn't eat fetch. What happens is a donkey eats barley and a cow eats fetch. So it's using things food that would be still good for its physiology. The minute an animal eats food that's not good for it, we're going to discuss those particular cases coming up. Okay. So now, the Gemara records... yeah, Marco?
So are you saying that it's unusual, Dammy? Are you saying it's unusual for a dog to eat steak, even though it's been...
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that at all. What the beginning of this stuff is saying is that if an animal that you owned was in the domain of another person, say you went for a Shabbos lunch, guys, I'm just going to put. Okay, I'm just hearing a message from somebody's phone. I'm not sure what it is, coming through like an electric shock. So, Michael, what I'm saying is, you come to me for Shabbos. And you bring your dog that should be on Prozac because it's slightly ADHD. And it comes to my house. Don't worry, I love your animal. I'm just saying. And your animal eats me out of house and home. Now, some of the food it eats would be what it's used to from your house. And some of it would be unusual food that I have, but would be physiologically appropriate for it, meaning it wouldn't cause the animal any damage and it would satiate the animal. Both types of food you owe full payment damages for.
Yeah. Okay, got it. All right, got it. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we're just gonna. The Gemara actually records a case. Now, when the Gemara says that it records an actual case, you must know, just on a side note, that the Gemara often puts fictitious cases together to illustrate that legal concept or that point. It's an artificial case in many cases to teach principles, as Rabbi Cohen said. But when the Gemara uses the phrase, the Gemara records an actual case, this is not a fictitious case. This is a case that came before the court. So it's nice to have one of these. There was a donkey that ate bread and chewed the bread basket. Rav Yehuda obligated the donkey's owner to pay full damages for the bread and half damages for the basket. Now, why do you think, guys, it's a case of full damages for the bread? Stephen, Kevin?
Yeah.
Why do you think we pay full damages for the bread if the donkey ate bread, Stephen?
Food damages. No.
It's okay.
Make the so don't get the bread. Sorry, okay. So yes.
Okay. Okay. So for any food, Stephen, that's why you and I'd love to do a private session with you to catch up on
yeah,
because you're going to really enjoy it. So as Kevin, I'm sure would mention, is that it's a case of Shane where the animal consumed the bread. He ate the bread. So therefore, in the damaged party's yard, there's full payment for Shane damage in the damaged party's yard. And the reason why we award only half damages for the basket, Stephen, is it's a case of Keren. Because Keren is unusual damage. An animal generally doesn't eat the basket. Okay, it's not nice for the animal. It doesn't feed the animal or nutritionally satisfy the animal. So the Gemara 19b4 asked the question, why does the animal's owner only pay half damages for the basket? Right? Why? Because since it's normal for the donkey to eat the bread, it's also normal for the donkey to chew the basket together with the bread. Accordingly, the owner should pay full damages for the basket as well. So what the Gemara is proposing is it's introducing us to a concept here that it's going to introduce a new concept that generally, that if an animal does something in order to get to the food, as we're going to learn, that you're eating a hot dog, and while you're munching it and you're watching a cricket game, you eat some of the serviette because you're half starving. After you realize you've consumed the hot dog, some of your serviette's missing, like the idiot me. They've done it. I've done that. I was starving, I ate a hot dog, I ate some of the serviette. Or alternatively, what happens is they use a case of a donkey that's crawling on a barrel in order to eat a turnip. In other words, it's reaching up to get to it, breaks the barrel, and we would think that it's half payment damages because it's unusual for it to break the barrel. What we're learning here is anything that an animal does in order to consume food as part of the technique to get to the food, either that you pay for it full damages as if it was shown, because it's a mechanism to get to the food. Okay? So, Stephen, that's what we're learning here. So what the Gemara is asking is, why, Kevin, should it be keren damage of half payment damages because it's unusual? Because the donkey was trying to get to the bread and munched the bread and damaged the basket at the same time. So the Gemara is saying, no, your principle is right, that if it damaged the basket in order to get to the food, it's shown full payment damages for the basket. The reason why it's half payment damages for the basket is, as the Gemara answers, this case was where it ate the bread first and only then chewed the basket. Meaning that the animal could get access, Stephen, to the bread first, and then afterwards it's an act of destruction. Remember, keren has two aspects. It's unusual, and its intent is to injure or kill. So sometimes you have a dog that's teething a puppy, and a puppy eats things out of destruction, not out of benefit. So when a puppy eats a couch, when it's teething, or your shoes, that's not shame.
Yeah.
But there's no physical gratification, because physical gratification is not the enjoyment the animal necessarily has. It's the fact that its appetite is satiated. This is what the Gemara is trying to bring. It's satiated by the consumption of the food. If you're hyperglycemic and ravenous and you want to eat something, after that food, in 20 minutes' time, you're going to feel better, and you're starving and you're shaking. But when an animal, like a puppy, eats food, it's because it's teething. So you might say, well, it derives physical gratification. Yes, it relieves the pain of the teething for a puppy, but it doesn't satiate the animal. Physical gratification means satiation of physiology. It doesn't mean that the puppy enjoys it so we have to distinguish between the type of damage. So where it ate the basket in a destructive manner, that would be keren because it's destructive, and it's also unusual damage, but it didn't do it in order to get to the food. Fine, principle done. So it was deemed keren because it ate the bread first and then chewed the basket afterwards. So now the Gemara asks further, but is eating bread normal for a donkey? Because what it's trying to say is now we're going to start to study what foods are appropriate for an animal to eat. Because if eating normal bread is unusual for a donkey, why should you pay full damages? Now we're going to distinguish between two types of unusual. It's something Mark asked me a few minutes ago. Number one, unusual in terms of what the animal usually eats, and unusual in fact of what is not appropriate for an animal to eat. So as we discussed with this woman from the Chihuahua in Santon, is if the dog's used to very expensive cuisine, it's its usual fare. But dog biscuits, even though it's not usual and the animal will eat it in a pinch, like we learned those 4 cases in the previous page, it's still physiologically suitable for the animal. And therefore they're both categories of shame, full payment damages. But what we're going to learn is what's the case of bread, because if it's unusual for the animal, in other words, the animal gets absolutely no nutritional benefit, because the bread is cooked gluten, then in that particular case, then it should be, what should it be? It should be half payment damages, because it's a destructive act of eating the bread, unusual act, destructive act, and the animal derives no physical gratification. So should it be half damages? But then the Gemara contrasts this with the Brisa. And it states, if an animal ate bread or meat or cooked food, the animal's owner pays half the damage. Because what is it saying here? It's saying, look, these are foods that it will not eat even out of necessity, because eating of these foods isn't physiologically beneficial to the animal, and therefore it constitutes keren, at which the owner obviously pays half damages for the first three offenses. So it's actually bringing this question from a brisa. So it's saying here in the brisa, is it not referring to a domestic animal such as a donkey or cow? Because it's saying, listen, a donkey, from what we can see from this brisa, it's not appropriate for these animals to have bread or cooked food or cooked meat. So why would the donkey be obligated to full payment damages for Shane in a case of the bread? It should be paying half damages for keren. And the Gemara answers very clearly, listen, this is not referring to a donkey. This is referring to a wild animal. And the Gemara challenges it. It says, but in the case of a wild animal or wild beast, eating meat is normal for it. So how could you say that the brisa is speaking about a wild beast when it rules that the owner pays only half damages? So the two examples in this brisa was what? Bread and cooked food or meat. So it's saying, listen, okay, since you're bringing this up, it's absolutely normal for a wild animal to have meat. What are you talking about here? And the Gemara answers, the brisa refers to where the meat is roasted or cooked, and it's unusual for a wild beast to eat roasted meat. So what it's saying is as follows, is that, I just went on a side note here, is that generally a carnivore, if you think of the Kruger National Park, like a jackal or a lion, etc., prefers to tear its own meat fresh and to have that taste of the raw blood and to eat it while the heart's virtually still pumping on that animal just killed. And an animal that's been boiled to death in a cholent is not very suitable. Most people don't enjoy a cholent after it's been cooked to death for 2 days. So the animal, who knows? Stephen disappeared, and please God, he'll be back. What we're saying is here that animal prefers raw meat. There's another answer that the Gemara gives to this price, and that is, if you prefer to say that it's talking about a wild animal, you can refer to a deer, because there's a difference between a donkey, a horse, a beast of burden, etc., any sort of animal that we would consider a workhorse animal. A deer is considered a wild animal in a forest and is generally scared of humans. And a deer, why do you think a deer won't eat meat, guys, when it refers to certain categories of wild animals? What does a deer eat, guys?
It's unusual. Like,
Grass. No.
Yes, grass, vegetation.
It's a vegan.
Vegan, exactly. Stephen hit on the right answer. So did Kevin and Arthur, and I'm sure you guys do. Is Stephen that it can't refer to cooked meat, because when we're talking about some of the more wild forest animals, they're herbivores. So obviously that's why if an animal did eat such a thing, it would be half payment damages, because it's completely physically not suited for the animal and it's unusual. Okay, so the brisa now goes back to the donkey case, and it says, if you prefer to say that in fact the brisa refers to a domestic animal and not a wild animal as you thought initially, it refers to where bread was on the table, and it uses a special term when it refers to that sort of bread. It's not a normal bread. Rashba refers to Rabbeinu Shananel's reading of the Gemara, and that refers to bread that is soaked in liquid, which a donkey would not normally eat. And it certainly wouldn't climb all the way on a table to eat something that was bread soaked in some sort of alcohol or liquid. Take a croissant, for example, that's in a soup, that's dried out and then wet and soggy. It's not something that a donkey would enjoy. So that answers that particular question. But when we're talking about a donkey eating normal bread from a basket, donkeys do become accustomed to human food, but not when it's soaked in alcohol. I know some human donkeys that are alcoholics, but those are different things. All right. So we're on 20A1, and we're just going to discuss another incident, okay? We're just flying through this. There was a goat that saw a turnip on the top of a barrel. It pulled its way and climbed up to the top of the barrel, and ate the turnip and broke the barrel. So Rava obligated the goat's owner full damages for the turnip and for the barrel. What is the reasoning behind his ruling? Guys, what do you think?
Because
Full
it's part and
damages,
parcel.
exactly. Just hang on, Gab. I'm just answering Kevin's question on the
It's
WhatsApp.
usual behavior.
Hang on a second. Kevin was asking on the WhatsApp, he's on my phone, is it full payment damages for the barrel and the turnip? The answer is yes. But why full payment damages for the barrel?
Regal.
Shane.
Regal for the barrel and Shane for the turnip.
I think it's Shane for both.
It's normal for a goat to climb on things, especially those mountain goats.
Okay, so you all answered correctly, guys. You all answered correctly, including Michael, is that we learned a principle that according to, you can unmute yourselves, Michael, you can unmute yourself, there's no problem, is that for damage, in order to get to the turnip, we learned a principle that that would be included in full payment damages. Why? Because it's regal. It is normal for the animal to climb up a barrel and damage it with its body in order to get to the food. So therefore, the barrel will be full payment damages, which is regal, because it's in the damaged party's yard or property, and it's Shane because it ate the turnip. Now, if it was unusual for the animal to climb up the barrel, it would switch from regal to keren. But because we learned a principle that anything that an animal does in order to reach its food within the capacity of normal body movement, then that would be considered a case of regal for climbing on the barrel and breaking it, exactly, Michael, as well as Shane for the turnip.
Yeah.
Good. Let's go on. It says...
Yeah, Shkak. I thought it was Shane for both. It's my mistake. Thank you.
No, Gavin, the principle is Shane for both because we're saying that the reason is that it's Shane in that it's normal for an animal to try and acquire its food. So principally it is. But the physical act of climbing on a barrel is regular. Okay, good, Gavin.
Yeah.
Good, Michael.
No, well done, Michael, as well. Cheers.
But I like the fact that Michael was specific and said regular. That's dead on. All right.
Yeah,
so what is the reasoning behind his ruling? Exactly as Michael said, since it is normal for the goat to eat the turnip, it is also normal for it to pour its way up and climb up to the top of the barrel, which is regal, in order to eat the turnip. Perfect. Another ruling. Ilfa said if an animal was in the public domain and she stretched out her neck and ate from food that was on the back of her fellow animal, she, the animal's owner, is liable to pay. What is the reason behind the ruling? Exactly as Kevin said the other day, the back of a fellow animal is legally like the yard of the damaged party. And the analogy we use, or Rabbi Cohen uses, is that you're on Louis Vuitton Avenue, you've got a bakkie with the food goods at the back, and suddenly they're vagrants when you stop at a robot and they all run across from the shacks at Alex and help themselves to all your private gear at the back of your bakkie. It's not the public domain, that's your private bakkie. So that's a case of when the animal stuck its head into your public domain, and then it's liable for shame. Even if the bakkie was in the public domain, it is no reason to open up your car doors or take stuff from your bakkie. It's your property. So Kevin, well done. You answered that the other day. It was a good insight. Okay. The Gemara considers whether Brisa supports Ilfa in this matter. Shall we say that the following Brisa supports him? If one's basket was slung over his shoulder and hanging behind him, and an animal stretched out her neck and ate from the basket, she, the animal's owner, is liable to pay for the food she has eaten. So the Gemara rejects this Brisa proof. Just as Rava said elsewhere, where she jumps, here to the Brisa not referred to where she jumps up to eat the food. So what it's saying is here, Kevin, is it's not saying you're wrong. In fact, it's saying you're right. But it's saying we've got to just make sure that when the animal actually goes to almost the private domain in order to eat, that it's not a case of shame, and we need to determine if it's a case of shame or a case of caring. Let's just take Gavin's issue in the beginning, where the Gemara was actually saying that if you enter the shopkeeper's premises, it's keren tam. okay, or keren mu'at, depending on how many times. Now, I said to Rabbi Cohen, but it entered the damaged party's private premises, so it should be shame. And he was saying it's unusual because in that particular case, the animal would be beaten out of the shop and it wouldn't forget it. So maybe a first case of that might be shame, but certainly not the second. And maybe your door widths would be more narrow, etc., etc. So here we're saying that it is a case of shame at the back of another animal because the animal isn't doing anything. The two animals are just merely stretching its head, it's chomping, and it's not doing any acrobatics. But the minute the animal does acrobatics and tries to jump or climb on another animal or does something very unusual physically in order to reach the food, that's considered not a case of shame anymore, but keren, at which half damages are appropriate in the public domain. So that would be half payment. So we've got to assess what the case is. Okay. The Gemara now cites the original context of Rava's remarks, and where was Rava's statement said? It was said regarding this following ruling. For Rav Oshaya said an animal was in the public domain and ate someone's food. If she walked and ate, the owner is not liable. But if she stood still and ate, the owner of the animal is liable. I'm just going to repeat this. Rava's statement was said in regard to the following ruling. Rav Oshaya said an animal was in the public domain and ate someone's food. If the animal walked and ate, the owner is not liable. If she stood and ate, the owner is liable. So the Gemara questions this ruling and says, listen, what is different about walking, which creates no liability in the public domain? Because it's the normal behavior of the animal. Okay? Why is there no liability? Because we learned that regel is exempt in the public domain. So if it's normal movement for the animal, there's no liability. And also standing still is the animal's normal behavior. Sometimes an animal stands still, sometimes it walks. So if there's no liability for walking and eating, there should be no liability for standing and eating either. Because it's not, by the way, guys, the fact that you're making the animal liable for regel. It's the fact that we're saying that if the animal stands and eats, or if the animal walks and eats, because it's normal and it's regel, it's not classified under keren. Therefore, there's no payment damages. So it's saying, why would you say that the animal is liable if she stood and ate, but not if she walked and ate? Because animals naturally either walk and eat, or they stand and eat. So why would the one be liable and the one not? Okay? The Gemara answers, Rava said, when Rav Oshia said she stood, he referred to where she jumps up to, stands up to get the food, which is abnormal behavior. Okay. So what we're learning here is whether or not it's full damages for shame when it enters into the backpack of another animal or your rucksack is if the animal is doing an unusual physical behavior to reach, or if it's like kind of normal behavior. If it's abnormal, keren, half damages. If it's normal, full damages for shame. Okay. So see the time. Okay, we have got a few minutes. Good. Now, we've got a separate issue which we're going to deal with tomorrow. We've only got 3 minutes and 43 seconds left, and it's a completely different issue in and of itself. So we're going to tackle that other issue tomorrow. So, guys, we are ending off 3.5 minutes early. Yay!
Ding ding, school bell.
So, guys, thank you very much for joining. I hope you enjoyed today. It was lovely to have you.
It was great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good seeing you.
We got 3 minutes to talk.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes to talk. I'll stop recording.